So Frank Warren says he expects Anthony Yarde to face the Alida Alvarez-Sergey Kovalev winner in 2019. Do I believe this? I don't know. I'm not going to completely dismiss it, all right? Because I do want to draw a distinction between the decisions of Frank Warren and the decisions of Tunde Ajayi, who is the trainer and manager of Anthony Yarde. Because Frank Warren and Tunde might not be on the same page all the time. Frank Warren might feel like they need to speed him up a little bit. Tunde Ajayi might feel like they need to go at the same steady pace. I don't know, I'm just speculating here. But the point I'm making is, when Frank Warren says he expects Yarde to face the Alvarez-Kovalev winner in 2019, I don't know whether Tunde feels the same way. That's what I'll say. I don't know whether that's in Tunde's plans, but it might be in Frank Warren's plans. Or it could just be Warren putting Yarde's name in the same sentence as these fighters in order to, bolster Anthony Yarde's name. It could be that. Here's one thing I'll say about Tunde though, right? Because Tunde is someone who gets a lot of criticism from the boxing fans in the UK because of the stuff that he says and because of the way he's handling Anthony Yarde's career. Now, I've been critical of some of the stuff that Tunde has said because Tunde can be very condescending in a lot of the interviews, and he tries to make out as though people who pull him up on things that he says or does are people who don't understand boxing, or anyone who criticizes him and his methods or anything he's said are people who don't really understand boxing. But the opposite is actually true in many cases. Tunde says things which he can only get away with when the interviewer is a young guy and hasn't been involved in boxing that long. Because he said many things which are just not true. And he's contradicted himself many times. Like when he said that Anthony Yarde's opponents are, good opponents, and let's have the likes of a Joshua Buatsi or a Jose Burton fight some of Anthony Yarde's opponents. And you'll see that these opponents are not easy. Well, Joshua Buatsi just did that, didn't he? And he knocked the guy out in one round who took Anthony Yarde like 7 or 8 or whatever it was. And after that, Tunde's backpedaling again and deflecting and acting like Yarde can't fight Buatsi for XXXX reasons, So Tunde gets a lot of criticism. I mean, Tunde apparently recently said, because I haven't been watching his interviews, but he recently said that no fighter has ever gone from being ranked at world level to fighting at British level. And instantly I was like, well, that's a lie. Plenty of fighters have done that. Gary Mason just off the top of my head, Gary Mason, who was ranked in the top 10 at heavyweight, dropped down to British level to fight Lennox Lewis for the British title. I know it was a very long time ago, but when Tunde's old enough to have remembered that. But anyway, the point I want to make is, as much criticism as I have for Tunde, my criticism isn't really so much for the way he's guiding Anthony Yarde's career, because I'm not in the gym with Tunde Ajayi seeing what he sees with Anthony in sparring. Maybe Tunde is actually guiding Anthony Yarde's career the best way. Maybe. Because maybe Anthony is very vulnerable behind the scenes. I don't know. But maybe Tunde's doing the best job possible for him. And I do like the technique which he's taught Anthony Yarde. My issue is with the PR. I think Tunde, when he gets on camera, he just puts his foot in it all the time. Where Tunde is good, and where I do want to give him a lot of credit, is instilling a positive attitude in the camp. Now, you don't want to instill a delusional attitude. You want to sufficiently test your charge in sparring and in the ring to bring him along. And also, as a gauge to find out where he's at, to find out what exactly you have. But you want to instill positivity. Now, Tunde is somebody who, when he's talking about potential opponents for Anthony Yarde, and interviewers are asking him, do you think this guy's dangerous? Do you think Yarde's got to worry about this or worry about that? Regardless of who the opponent is, even if they're talking about the likes of an Alvarez and Beterbiev and all these kind of people, Tunde always says, no. It's them who needs to be worried. Anthony don't need to be worried about anything. It's them who needs to be worried. This way of thinking is very important in boxing, because in British boxing for so many years, American fighters were so revered, they were put up on such a pedestal in Britain, that by the time British fighters got to challenge these American fighters, they were often overawed, they were often beaten mentally because of the perception they had of these American fighters in their head. That I need to be worried about his power, I need to be, he's an American and he's done this and he's done that. And, you know, they were in awe of the fighter before they got in the ring with him. Whereas Tunde is trying to instill in Anthony Yarde a mindset of, no. They need to be in awe of me. I don't need to be in awe of them. They need to be in awe of me. Now, obviously, again, you want to be diligent in preparing your fighter for championship level competition. You want to be testing him in the gym. You want to be testing him in the ring. But you definitely need that kind of attitude. Even when you're in the ring, if you're in the ring in a tough fight, you want your fighter to be thinking, I'm going to get this guy. This guy thinks he's tough. Now, he ain't tough. I don't care who he is or where he's been or how many championship fights he's fought. I'm going to show him. He ain't felt my full power yet. I ain't caught him right yet. This is the kind of mentality you want the fighter to have, even against somebody who's way more experienced. Do you understand? And this is what, from what I can see, Tunde is trying to instill in his camp around Anthony Yarde. Is this kind of mentality like, we are the A-side, we are the beast. They need to fear us, not the other way around. They need to worry about my left hook and my right hand, not the other way around. Now, obviously, again, you're diligent and you prepare technically to block your opponent's best shots, but the emphasis is on you are the one who is special, not the other guy. You know, and again, there is a fine line between delusion and confidence in boxing and in life in general. But it's better to be on the slightly delusional side than on the negative side, where you're worried about this guy's punch and you're worried about this and worried about that. In general, anyway, because different things work for different characters and different personality types. For Anthony Yarde, somebody who was so inexperienced, you know, for somebody like him, you do need to build their confidence. You need to build their confidence to the point where it's ingrained in them that they truly believe it. And again, you need to test them and all that kind of business, but you have to build the confidence. Now, I'm probably going to make a video about Anthony Yarde's next fight, and that's the reason I'm making this video, because I'm probably going to make a video about it. I said that I would not make any more Anthony Yarde videos until he fights somebody with a pulse. I told you, wait me up when we get there. Now, when I initially heard who Anthony Yarde's opponent was, I'd never heard of him before, but I subsequently looked at his box rec and I heard people getting at me on Facebook and whatnot, telling me, actually, this opponent is all right. It's a decent step up. He went the distance with Vodsek fairly recently, or Vozdik. I always pronounce it wrong. And yeah, that is a decent, I guess, step up for Anthony Yarde in terms of a development fight. Somebody who's been the distance with a championship level fighter, excuse me, fairly recently. That is a decent step up. And maybe I will make a video for it. Do I expect this guy to beat Anthony Yarde? I've never watched him fight. So I'm not going to say whether I expect him to beat Yarde, whether I expect Yarde to have any trouble, how I expect the fight to go. I don't know. I think when I had a cursory look, when I shot a glance at the guy's record, once again, he doesn't appear to have a lot of KOs on his record. And again, that would seem to, I don't want to say it necessarily implies that Anthony Yarde is suspect around the whiskers. it could just be that Tunde is being extra careful. You know, maybe he doesn't have any concern about Anthony Yarde's punch resistance. But, you know, why put a guy in there with a puncher if you don't have to, right? But at some stage, Yarde is going to have to get tested to the point where you're going to have to put him in with somebody who can bang. Unless he does really have a poor chin and you only want to put him in against the puncher when you're fighting for a world title. Because that's how worried you are about him getting knocked out. You're thinking, okay, we'll take that risk, but we're only going to take it for a championship fight for a lot of money against the right champion who's sufficiently vulnerable. Do you understand? It could be a situation like that. I don't know. But just from a durability standpoint and to test Anthony Yarde's skills, it'll be interesting to see him against this next opponent. So I'll do a separate video on that. This does appear to be somebody with some kind of pulse if he's able to go the distance with Vodcek fairly recently. So yeah, I'll make a video about that. And hopefully we get to learn more about Anthony Yarde in the fight. Because that's the whole thing for me is I rate Anthony Yarde's ability, you know, to have such little amateur experience and to have the technique that he does, I think is incredible, to be honest with you. I think Anthony Yarde, and I made a video about this in the past, Anthony Yarde is a precocious talent. Oh, yes, he is. When it comes to his athleticism, when it comes to the technique that he's been able to learn in a very short amount of time, this is a precocious talent. Now, whether you think that technique suits him or not is besides the point. The point is, that technique that he's learned, you cannot get most fighters starting boxing from scratch as amateurs through to being, 16-0, whatever he is now as a pro. You can't get most fighters in such a short space of time, such little experience, to be able to learn the technique that Anthony Yarde has. Whether you think that technique suits him or not, try and get them to learn that technique in such a short space of time. You'll find that 99% of fighters can't do it. Anthony Yarde obviously is somebody who picks things up very quickly. Yeah? And, you know, there's no point really going back and saying what if, but somebody who's that athletically gifted, you do wonder how his career would have turned out and where he might be at this point in his boxing career had he started boxing much earlier. Because the ability that he has to pick things up is quite incredible. I assure you, being around boxing for as long as I have been following the sport for as long as I have, it's not common for fighters to be able to develop that quickly in terms of their technique and stuff like that, their punch picking, their stance, their shape. That's not common at all. So Yarde is clearly very talented, clearly very athletically gifted. He's got speed and power and coordination and all this kind of stuff. But there must be vulnerabilities there. I'm curious to see if this next opponent can test him to find out whether the vulnerabilities are there or whether actually he's not vulnerable, in which case we might have something quite special in the shape of Anthony Yarde. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Frank Warren's comments. Is it all bluster from Frankie boy, Frankie Blue Eyes? Or is he serious about putting Anthony Yarde in with the winner of Alvarez Kovalev 2? And how do you think he would do against the... I feel like I already know what you guys are going to say. Most of you. Is there any kind of disagreement between Frank Warren and Tunde Ajayi in terms of how quickly they'd like to move Anthony Yarde's career in 2019? It's all speculation, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.